Armed conflict has been with us since the dawn of civilization. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of armies as far back as 10,000 BC. Military history has always existed on a grand scale, with legendary battles fought on land, sea, and air. From ancient daggers to modern medals of honor, in expert hands, these relics reveal the stories of those who are no longer here to speak for themselves. Join us as we unlock the secrets of Militaria. Today on Militaria, we look at a nursing sister's artifacts from World War I, a chief petty officer's uniform, and learn the history of a World War II pilot's hat. Mark breaks down the history of a pilot's hat worn during World War II.
Most pilots didn't want to become instructors, they wanted to go and fight. That was really the essence of what they were being trained for, and there's a risk even training people.
Jennifer and Lisa look at a uniform that belonged to a notable chief petty officer of the Royal Canadian Navy.
A tunic is just a tunic at the end of the day, but what it's really all about is the individual who is wearing that tunic or particular uniform.
Gary covers the possessions of a Canadian nursing sister who served during World War I.
We'll probably never know why she resigned her commission. It's not like she was against nursing. It was just maybe what she was seeing over there was not something that she was ready for.
My name is Sean Way. I'm a retired military veteran, and I presently work for the provincial government of Nova Scotia. I brought in some artifacts of my great-great-aunt, Annie Piercy, who was a nursing sister in World War I.
Amidst the chaos of World War I, the Canadian Army Medical Corps nursing sisters revolutionised battlefield care. Recognised by their blue uniforms, they were trailblazers, attaining equal pay to their male officer counterparts. The dedicated Bluebirds were beacons of professionalism and were eager to serve. January 1915 saw an outpouring of over 2,000 courageous applicants for just 75 nursing roles. The Bluebirds extended their healing touch beyond soldiers, caring for prisoners of war and civilians alike. Nursing sisters like Annie Olive served bravely, often under dire conditions. Her journey finished safely after the war, but not all nurses were as lucky as Annie. Many will remember the treacherous journey of nurses aboard the ill-fated HMHS Llandovery Castle, a hospital ship sunk by a German U-boat in 1918, highlighting the peril nursing sisters faced, even away from the front lines.
Welcome to Militaria, Sean. I see you've brought in some interesting First World War memorabilia, and I was wondering if you could tell us what it is you brought.
This here's a pouch that she would have worn, has some materials in it. A pin that she received when she became a nurse at the Victoria General Hospital. It's dated on the back with her name. This is her World War I service medal. Her ID disc she would have worn while she was overseas. And this is her service medal that she'd wear on a piece of clothing, saying that she had served in the military or served in the World War I.
This is known as the British War Medal, and not everyone received it.
Oh, no?
No, you had to have actually served overseas. This is the Class C service badge. Because she never left England, she got a Class C. Gotcha. If she had left England and served at the front, she would have got a Class A. And if she had been wounded, she would have got a Class B. The pin was given after you served. So it's not something that went on a uniform, this went on your civilian clothing.
Gary, what would Annie have had to go through to become a nursing sister in World War I? Would she have had to go through basic training like soldiers possibly?
No, not really. So first of all, a nursing sister had to be a qualified nurse. Mm-hmm. She had to be physically fit, and she had to be single. Even if she was single, let's say she was a widow, she couldn't have children. I think it was the morality of the time. We could not have a woman going off to serve their country and leaving their husband behind to tend to the children. That was just not done. There was no basic training per se. It was, I'm sure there was some sort of quick, this is the army, those are the soldiers, you're this, you don't go over there, don't go here, this, that sort of thing, but not like we think of now that everyone, whether you're a nurse, a padre, you're all going through basic training and getting the same basic amount because you're all soldiers first. She applies to get a position to be commissioned as a nurse. At that time, it was the patriotic thing to do, obviously.
Right.
And it probably was a bit of adventure for someone from Fairview, Nova Scotia, to get out of Nova Scotia.
Certainly.
So Sean, what do you know about Annie through the family and through obviously your aunt that was in the Women's Army Corps in the Second War?
Well, I know that she was my great-grandmother's younger sister. She didn't really speak of Annie that I recall. Never married, never had children. She had left the nursing service 4 months prior to the end of World War I. I'm not exactly sure of the details.
No, and I went through her entire record, because that caught me off guard when I read that. I'm going, something happened. She worked at the 15th Canadian General Hospital, and it was a convalescent hospital. So, I'm sure that there were some horribly disfigured people that came there.
I do know that she did have some issues with her service in the war, and that might have been a contributing factor to why she never married.
We'll probably never know why she resigned her commission. Maybe it was something as simple as this was not an aspect of nursing that she was cut out for, because she did return to nursing on return to Halifax. We have Annie that was a nursing sister in the First War, and then we have your great aunt who was in the Canadian Women's Army Corps in the Second. Do you know what she did?
I know she was a chief warrant officer.
Oh, really?
But that's really all I know. I have a regimental photograph of her, and that's the only thing I have in a footlocker.
And then you joined the military to be a supply technician.
I did. I joined in 1985, served for 23 years, mostly on board ships in the Navy. I also served with the Air Force in Trenton, Ontario, and with the Army in Trenton, Ontario as well. Was there much call for nurses in World War I? Did many go overseas?
There was a huge demand for nurses, not necessarily at the beginning, because at the beginning they called up existing Army Medical Corps units. It started that there was not a lot of nursing sisters required, so there was a big demand. But as things developed and the military developed and these units were finding what they really should look like as opposed to what they looked like in peacetime, there was a quick realization that, if we're going to have a hospital, we need nurses, because these are hospitals, right? And
sure.
The orderlies can only do so much, and the doctors have important things to do, and the nurses, are required to be that middle ground is very important. So this was an accessory pouch that would be worn off of her belt, because it would be nicely secured with that little snap. But the fewer times we snap this, the better it is for the artifact. Inside here were the items that she would have been using regularly on a daily basis. I have no idea what the big honking needle is for. However, it could have been used for suturing, but it is awfully large. Again, I'm not a doctor.
Looks like a tongue depressor.
It does look like it does look like a tongue depressor, because we've got to remember that back in those times they weren't using disposables, right?
Correct.
Then we had a pair of tongs or tweezers that are ubiquitous, and then there's two empty ones here that were for syringes. These were not disposable syringes. The needles were used over and over again, and probably went to a workshop and someone sharpened them for you, and you just didn't want to be the guy that got it before it went for sharpening, because I'm sure it was not a pleasant experience. This even could have been what she used to the Victoria General and took it with her. It may not have been military issue.
I did learn quite a bit from Gary today. I was not aware of the different classifications of the service pin, so I was glad to fill in some blanks.
So Sean, thank you so much for coming into Militaria today and bringing your family artifacts.
My pleasure.
So what are your plans for them?
I'm at an age now, I got to think of who they're going to go to after me. Maybe my daughter or granddaughter may be the custodians in the future, and if not, maybe they'll go to a museum or some place appropriate for them.
But as you've learned, you keep them together.
Oh yes, they will never be separated.
As opposed to parceling them out.
No, that's right.
So once again, Sean, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
My advice to anyone inheriting artifacts is, first of all, is keep what you receive together. Then start talking to your relatives and see what else is out there, because there might be other things, and as in Sean's case, other people had things and they started giving them to Sean. And then make sure you stabilize them. Stop anything bad happening to the artifacts, and then think about mounting it some way so that everyone in the family can see it.
Coming up on Militaria.
Chief Pay Officer First Class Raymond Lawrence's uniform speaks to a period in a Royal Canadian Navy history that sometimes doesn't get talked about.
My name is Lisa McNiven, and I'm an archivist at the Naval Museum of Halifax. We were talking about this tunic today because the tunic represents so many things. It represents Mr. Lawrence's service, but also his early basic training in HMCS Cornwallis. And it was such an integral part of Nova Scotia's military training that I think a lot of people will make a connection with the uniform when they think back to their early days in Cornwallis.
Enlisting in the Royal Canadian Navy in 1953, Chief Petty Officer Raymond C. Lawrence's service spanned an impressive 32 years, during which he served on several naval ships. His illustrious career was marked by significant milestones. In 1974, he was promoted to Chief Petty Officer First Class. 2 years later, he achieved a historic first, becoming the first black coxswain of a Canadian warship with his posting to the HMCS Annapolis. His leadership and service were further recognized when he was awarded the prestigious membership of the Order of Military Merit, making him the first black Canadian to receive this honor. Lawrence's contributions extended beyond his sea duties. He was instrumental in training military participants for the Royal Nova Scotia International Tattoo and ended his illustrious career at Allied Maritime Command Headquarters. His uniform is not just a piece of military attire, it represents a legacy of perseverance, excellence, and groundbreaking achievements in the Canadian military.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi.
What have you brought to Militaria today?
The uniform of Chief Petty Officer First Class Raymond Lawrence's tunic.
It's an unusual color. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
By the end of the 1960s, unification happened in the Canadian forces. And when that happened, the Navy and Air Force lost their traditional uniforms and everyone started to wear the Army green.
Is there anything on this uniform that indicates unification other than its color?
The buttons themselves, before unification, Royal Navy buttons had the anchor on them with the word Canada under it. This button here is a unification button as well. And then also the anchors here on the collar indicate that he was a naval member. Lawrence served for 32 years in the Navy, and over the course of his career, he had earned a couple of medals. The first one, the most significantly, is the Order of Merit. This ribbon represents the medal for the Silver Jubilee, celebrate 25 years of Queen Elizabeth being on the throne. And this one is the CD, the Canadian Forces Distinction Medal, and it represents that Raymond had served for 12 years plus.
Did unification happen within a certain time period? Was it a long process or was it immediate?
Unification officially started around 1968 and lasted up until about 1985. Unification was a time in the armed forces when they were really kind of analyzing the spending of the armed forces. You know, they decided that in order to reduce spending and to kind of bring things together and to make things more organized and unified, they figured the good solution was bringing all of the different elements of the armed forces together into one unit. And it just wasn't about finances. I think there was a genuine belief by bringing all the units together, it would bring them together as a force, like an actual military force, and bring more camaraderie between the different elements within the forces. In the case of the Navy, there were quite a lot of people who disagreed with this unification process. So when unification did end, immediately all the different elements, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, went back to their traditional uniforms, their customs, and their traditions. What I really love about Chief Petty Officer First Class Raymond Lawrence's uniform is that not only is it a beautifully preserved tunic, but it also speaks to a period in a Royal Canadian Navy history that sometimes doesn't get talked about. Unification was loved and disliked in many different ways, but it also tells us that fuller picture of the Royal Canadian Navy and our sailors and officers' experience within the armed forces at that time. Raymond Lawrence joined the Royal Canadian Navy in 1953. After signing up, he went to HMCS Cornwallis for his training. Served for 32 years. He has served on multiple warships. In 1974, he was awarded the Order of Merit. So this medal is a reflection of his service and his pride in the service. He was actually the first Black Canadian to be awarded the Order of Military Merit, which is quite significant. Slowly but surely, throughout the years, Raymond climbed through the ranks up to Chief Petty Officer First Class. And then in 1976, he became coxswain of HMCS Annapolis, which made him the first Black Canadian to become coxswain of a warship in the Royal Canadian Navy. A tunic is just a tunic at the end of the day, but what it's really all about is the individual who is wearing that tunic or particular uniform. Their service, their stories, their experiences, that's what we try to preserve. And so when we think about our veterans in the Royal Canadian Navy, it's their service and the people that they were behind the uniform. One of the things I really love about Lawrence is that it's a local story. It's about a local individual born in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, who at a very young age joined the Navy and served for 32 years. He made his life and his career about the Navy, and he was so proud of his service. He took very good care of all of his uniforms and all of his belongings relating to his military service. So when he did donate his collection to the museum, as you can see, they're beautiful, pristine pieces, look absolutely brand new like the day he last wore it. And so we're very privileged to have such a wonderfully preserved piece in our collection.
Absolutely. Jennifer, thank you for bringing in this beautiful uniform. It represents pride and service. We appreciate you showing us and telling us a story about Mr. Lawrence.
I'm so happy I got to share it today.
Coming up on Militaria.
The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan was Canada's largest contribution in the Second World War. The scale is unheard of even today.
My name is Drew McQuinn, and today I brought in artifacts from my grandfather from World War II. I knew him as a kid. I was 12 when he passed away. I knew him as my grandfather, but not as a flight trainer. He had a lot of amazing contributions to his community and to the flight school that he trained at.
The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan was a monumental endeavour that converted Canada's expansive landscapes into a massive wartime aviation school from 1940 to 1945. The programme quickly scaled up, growing from a modest Royal Canadian Air Force to an assembly line of aerial warriors for the Commonwealth. Canada witnessed the rise of elementary flying schools, where young cadets progressed from eager novices to confident pilots. This surge of activity turned towns into nurturing hubs for the airmen, with local families offering warmth and comfort far from the battlefronts. The adage, there are old pilots and bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots, encapsulated the plan's philosophy: prudence over recklessness, ensuring the skies were filled not just with planes, but with skilled airmen who could return safely home. The legacy of the plan was not only the 131,000 plus aircrew it trained, but also the indelible mark it left on Canadian soil and the enduring camaraderie it fostered within its communities.
Well, I'd like to welcome you, Drew, to the set of Militaria, and you brought in some interesting items along. Maybe you can give us a brief overview of what you brought along today.
Well, we have a number of items here from my grandfather. His name was Victor Sterrett. He was a flight trainer in the war. The first item that I really like is the leather flight helmet that he wore in open cockpit flying, and also his dress uniform and his, I guess it's a beret, is it?
A forage cap.
And this is a photo of him wearing the uniform.
I would actually think that would actually be the picture when he was first enlisted, because he doesn't have his full wings yet. So it's obviously he's got his air cadet, that's his, well, his initial cadet.
And also correspondence between my grandfather and his family and friends during the war.
What sort of time frame does that archive cover?
From 1941 to 1945. So
pretty much the entire war.
The whole war, yeah.
And that's just a small part of your archive, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I have probably hundreds of these actually that we couldn't fit on the table here.
Drew brought a great collection of his grandfather's items, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg of what's probably he's going to uncover. So we have an example of a flight helmet, typical RCF style. In your grandfather's case, he actually flew two different types of aircraft. I think probably trained on the Finch, but when he was service flying training school number 1 at Camp Borden, he was flying Harvards. You have a forage cap, so we see the wings on it after his commissioning. Standard issue RCF tunic. In a lot of cases, the initial uniforms were given by the RCF. Post-operationally, they would sometimes get them made by tailors, or they would get them fitted, so that once they became officers or they actually were flying, they would have used different sort of better fitting uniforms. So very good presentation. It's very good shape considering, again, it's 80 years old, and obviously it's remained quite well. However you're storing it's obviously worked. So
it was stored at our cottage, so it's incredible. The mice actually got into one of them, but it's doing okay, so I'm happy with that.
What about your grandfather's service record?
He enlisted, I believe, in 1941. He couldn't go overseas because of an injury in his leg. He walked with a limp. So he became a flight trainer at Borden Flight School in Ontario. Before the war, he was a teacher. After the war in 1945, he went to Dal Medical School for becoming a family physician.
To see his grandfather's service was solely instructing, that's fairly rare to see that. But he must have been a very good pilot in order to become instructor. Your grandfather was at #1 SFTS school. The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan was Canada's largest contribution in the Second World War. And they were basically training mainly Commonwealth pilots, but they also trained Royal Air Force and British pilots. So you would take basically a recruit, you bring him into the RCF, depending on his level of skill set, they would put them to EFTS, which is the Elementary Flying Training School. And then the next step would be the Service Flying Training School. So they were going to put them in bigger aircraft, which in this case was the Harvard, and then they would move on to the next step in the training, which in that case would probably be an operational training unit, and then ultimately to a squadron. The other thing too with your grandfather was that he was an instructor. So he's up flying with these guys that, you know, basically have maybe 10, 12 hours, not a huge amount of hours. And now all of a sudden they're getting into a bigger aircraft, a lot more power, and there were lots of accidents. He would have had his own training system. So Service Flying Training School, they would have found skill level was good enough to actually go back into the system and teach. They would have sent him to Trenton, where they would have actually put him through instructor school. He would have learned how to talk to the students, how to fly, how to demonstrate, but huge risk because you are going out every day and you're training these 19, 20-year-olds that are flying high-performance aircraft for the first time, basically thrown into that meat grinder, let's say, to become a pilot. So,
one of the memories that weighs on his mind was sending up new pilots into the air, sometimes when they weren't ready, but he was forced to by the higher-ups because they were trying to process as many trainees as possible in a short period of time.
It was just such a huge scale project. The scale is unheard of even today, and again, you don't realize how big it really was. Because your grandfather had such a long period of service, he would have seen the swing of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan to push pilots through. Initially was tremendous amount of pilots were pushed through. Obviously towards the end of the war, the need is sort of diminishing. The sort of backstory that you don't think about is actually his actual role in that piece of history.
Mark gave some really good insights about what the experience would have been like for my grandfather at Camp Borden, and a lot of interesting facts that made me have even more respect for my grandfather if that was possible.
Drew's grandfather would have been identified as a strong candidate to train, and obviously he had a very good standard of airmanship to be able to become the instructor. His grandfather's service was from 1941 to 45, a long period, and solely instructing. That's fairly rare to see that. He had tremendous risk, but he must have been a very good pilot in order to become instructor. We've got pictures, and we've got obviously this huge archive of letters.
I mean, really happened.
4 years of correspondence. Where is it going to excite you to go with it?
Well, I think, you know, we'll have to make sure that the mice don't get to the uniforms, so we're going to make sure that they stay dry in an appropriate storage place. But these are really fun items to pull out and use to teach my son about his family history, so I think that's what we're going to use them for. You know, if you have these artifacts sitting around your house, try to learn a bit about these people in your life that there could be a whole other story that you don't know. So you want to make sure that those memories aren't forgotten.